Thank you, Celia. You gave a good case for a mandatory proposal, but it's good to dream. Okay, so over to Tomasz Regucki from Krakow, talking about CSR stock indices.
Right. First of all, it was a pleasure to take part in Sustainable Companies project, as it is a pleasure to be here today. I've got a few words about so-called sustainable indices. The first word, this is the stock index, or a stock exchange point of reference for sustainability. It consists of companies which act according to sustainable development principles. This idea is quite recent. The first one appeared in 1999. This is the longest running sustainability benchmark. According to 2009 report, there are currently about 50 sustainable stock indices on numerous stock exchanges worldwide. And basically, we can distinguish two types of sustainable indices, the so-called broad-based indices, which use specified ESG criteria, and they are general, they do not focus on specified problems. The other one is sector-specific index, and it focuses on specified challenges regarding environment. We've got a few examples here, like DAX Global Saracen Sustainability Index or Low Carbon 100 Europe Index as a sector sector specific. And how it works? Firstly, it raises awareness of sustainable development and therefore encourages socially responsible investment, SRI, or sustainable and responsible investment, which would be more suitable for SRI. And then it, of course, reduces the cost of SRI by providing important information and evaluation for sustainable investors. Sustainable investment is more standardized this way. And then we hope that it again raises the awareness and it goes round. There are a few conditions which need to be fulfilled. Firstly, investors must know about the initiative, so they must be aware of this sustainable index. The criteria must be transparent, as this index is also a product, and investor needs to know what he buys, needs to know before he decides. And we should point out that sometimes it needs time and it needs other conditions for the index to be suitable. I would also emphasize the demand side. I mean the SRI investment funds. The more of them exist, the easier it is for the sustainable companies to raise capital, and therefore the idea works better. Warsaw Stock Exchange is interesting as the first sustainable index in Central and Eastern Europe, introduced in 2009. It is broad-based index. It consists of three phases of constructing. I would refer further. I would refer to my paper. Here, I would like to point out that only major companies on Warsaw Stock Exchange are even considered. I mean, 140 are considered out of 440. So it is an obstacle. It is a barrier. And for this research, I asked myself the question: does it work? I mean, what's the actual market response to the fact that a company is included in Respect Index? Because for it to work, investors need to be aware, and the market should discount it properly, discount the fact that that it's included. And out of few possible research methods, most interesting are the returns of the index itself and the turnover value of stocks. Firstly, the first graph is often presented, but in case we analyze it periodically, I mean, each period represents a slightly different composition of the index as it was periodically revised. We can see that only in a slight period of time, the performance of the index was actually better than the Warsaw Stock Exchange main index. And if we test it statistically, we can see that due to high p-value, the result is not statistically significant. So according to this criterion, unfortunately, even though it was average returns were slightly higher, the response wasn't statistically significant. The second step, I thought of this turnover value ratio. I mean, the relation of turnover value of companies' shares on one day and the total turnover. And I asked myself a question, is the average turnover value ratio, is it higher in time when a company is included in Respect Index? Out of 20 companies, there were a bit more of them included in the index. I took 20 for the criteria I again refer to my paper. 10 of them, in 10 cases, the average ratio was higher, but only 4 of them, the green ones, in only 4 cases, the difference was statistically significant. What are the conclusions? Given the turnover value, in most cases, the Respect was ignored by the market. First reason would be that it's the poor construction of the index. As I mentioned before, only 140 companies are even considered. The second one, insufficient transparency of the criteria of the composition. More importantly, I think that the SRE funds sector in Poland is not yet sufficiently developed. As far as I know, there are only 2 SRI funds. I would still say that some reaction was observed, and it may be expected that this reaction will be stronger. The Respect initiative, I think it's worth continuation. Some changes are desirable. And the general conclusions, I think that sustainable indices are a good way of promoting the sustainable development or CSR principles. There is little research dedicated to market response. I proposed some methodology. I think this is worth continuing. This is worth carrying on regarding other stock exchanges and other indices. As I said before, the investment funds should be emphasized, and the easier it is for those funds to operate, the easier it is for sustainable companies to raise capital. For example, tax deductions, in my opinion, would be desirable, tax deductions for this SRI funds. And to conclude, some people say, and it was said, I think, quite a few times yesterday, that modern or mainstream economics fail, and the modern capitalism, maybe modern free market economy, right now fails, and I disagree. I disagree because, in my opinion, economics is rather a descriptive science, and it is all about incentives, or knowledge about incentives, and in this case it works perfectly. The theory of market failure and a case of externalities, it explains what is happening now and what has been happening over the years, and what we may do now is answer the questions how to set those incentives, and socially SRI funds and sustainable indices are, in my opinion, a good way for that. Thank you very much for your attention.